I really think that you want to use it as a thinking tool, but do not outsource your thinking to ChatGPT.
Just some of the stats that you brought out there, like more than half of all Gen AI enrollments come from emerging markets such as India and Brazil. And in general, demand is so high that Coursera sees about 6 enrollments per minute. And that's crazy.
The biggest difference was, I just felt like every single day I had to earn the right to be the CEO. And, my philosophy, and I think in that essay, I might have said, I want to be an entrepreneur. So probably sometime after college, and when I was thinking about business school, I was thinking about being an entrepreneur. But I had accepted a job at McKinsey as an analyst. I worked there in the summer between my 2 years of business school, and I was planning to go back. I'd accepted a job to go back to McKinsey, not be a CEO when I had graduated from business school. But then I got this opportunity from Bill Sharp at the business school and to start a company called Financial Engines. And I asked my wife, I said, well, what should I do? Should I take the safe route and the awesome route and work at McKinsey, or should I take a gamble and work with this Nobel Prize winner and try to start a company? And she said, come on, this is a once in a lifetime to work with a Nobel Prize winner. So I went that path. And now I've been a CEO since 1996. I had a couple years off between Financial Engines and Coursera, but basically this has been my career.
I'm curious, what were the expectations versus the reality of being a CEO?
It's not like it wasn't like it is now. I didn't have a lot of expectations about being a CEO. Nowadays, with some of the very wealthy CEO founders out there, it certainly gets glamorized. I think there's a lot of younger people who want to be CEOs because it's kind of cool. At least some people think it's cool. But back in the day, I just was like, I got a job to do, which is to build a valuable company. I had never done it before. I mean, when I was just starting out at Financial Engines, I'd never hired anybody and I'd never fired anybody. I was never a manager. I was just only ever a student and an analyst. So I didn't know what to make of the job. I just started trying to create a company where we had a product that people wanted to buy. So it was pretty simple. And then over the years, I've learned a lot more about being a CEO, and I've worked with I spent time with a lot of other CEOs over the decades, and now I have a better sense for it. But I didn't know what I was getting into and on the job.
I'd love to hear that. I'm curious, before we go into Coursera, on the financial engines, obviously you worked a lot in finance. What are some of the financial lessons that you're teaching your kids? I think financial education is so crucial, and I'm just glad there are more and more people who talk about it publicly and bring more attention to that.
Yeah, so a few things, and I'll get into just a very brief explanation of some of our parenting strategies when it comes to teaching about money. Now, my 3 daughters are now 27, and 30 and 33, so they're all older now. But I'd say a few of the lessons are, well, when they were younger, the big lesson is, treat money with care. Don't obsess about it too much, but don't be frivolous. Like it's an important thing. You earn it. You should really respect having money, and when you spend it, you should be thoughtful about that. So one of the things that we did that was I thought pretty good. I actually learned it from a friend. Is with our kids, we said by the time they were in probably middle school, we said, look, you're going to have responsibilities around the house. It's going to be like a job. We will pay you sort of an income for doing this job. If you don't do the job, well, you're going to have to do the job. We're going to force you to do the job because it's not your choice, and then we'll also pay you. And here's the thing: we said, as you get older, you could get other jobs before you go to college. But anything that you have, we created 2 accounts. We had a checking account for each kid, and we had a savings account. We said the checking account, that's where the money goes. And you can take money out of the checking account. It's up to you. Do what you want. But any money that you put in your savings account, you cannot take back out until you go to college. Here's the
Gotcha.
thing though. Any money that you put in your savings account will double. The day before you go to college, any money in your savings account, we will simply write you a check for the amount of money in your savings account. We'll double it. And that's what you get to use in college because we will pay for your tuition and your books and your food. We will not pay for your clothing. We will not pay for any social fun stuff in college. That's got to be your own money. And so our kids, I think, really developed a pretty healthy attitude towards, I want to have some fun with my friends, but I've got to be saving for a rainy day. And the idea that my folks are going to double it was helpful. So that was one. Another quick thing with our daughters is, of course, when they start working, 401ks are really important. Get the match. You invest it in equities because you're young and get the match. Don't have really big expense ratios. You want to be in index funds and or ETFs. And then the other thing that my wife and I, sorry, I mean, obviously money is a really big thing. My wife and I figured out we have very different ideas about money and borrowing and spending versus making money. Like that's been something where we haven't had the same point of view. I'm a little
Hmm.
more thrifty. She's a little more live for today. We created things called we call them discretionary funds, where we share all of our money. So all of our money goes into one account, but then each of us has our own separate account, a checking account or savings account. And at certain times where we both agree, we'll write a check to each other. We'll say, okay, here's, whatever, $5,000. You put it in your discretionary fund, 5,000 bucks. I'll put it in mine. Discretionary means you could do anything you want with it. You can gamble with it. You can give it away. You could buy shoes. Yeah, you could do whatever you want. And so we generally do things responsibly with our shared money. But if we ever want to do things that the other person disagrees with, we just use our discretionary money. And a little bit of separation of financial autonomy has been good for our marriage.
No, that sounds great. It sounds like a great idea, and I love the notion of responsibility, and also, you can spend it how you want it to, but as long as you can, navigate it properly, it'll work well. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
talking about the philosophy and shifting gears to Coursera here, when it comes to your leadership style, the philosophy of running Coursera, how has it evolved over the years? I think you've been in the role for what, 7.5 years now.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty long time.
It has been. I wasn't thinking it was going to be this long. I thought I might be done. I was 18 years at Financial Engines. And then when I finished up there, I mean, my wife was like, "Look, you've been working since we were dating. It's it's time for us to have a little bit of fun." So I thought I might be done, but I spent 2.5 years with my wife, mostly traveling, and it was fantastic. And then I got this opportunity to work at Coursera. So I have been here for about 7.5 years, and my philosophy. I guess I could put it in a few different categories. If I read through the values of Coursera, it pretty closely captures a lot of what I think it is to be a CEO in terms of values. So maybe I'll talk about job role and values. So first, let me do job role. So I generally feel that CEOs have a job to do, which is different from everybody else. And I like doing a lot of different things, but I learned as a young CEO, like if you're doing product design and if you're doing too much sales and marketing and other things, then nobody else is doing the job of the CEO. Like the CEO is the only one who really has that job. And so you really have to kind of stay focused on the main responsibilities of that job. And they are basically number one is to build a company that is valuable and meaningful, right? So
Hmm.
something that is rewarding to the investors and the employees and is meaningful in delivering on the mission of the company. And everybody wants to work for a company that's meaningful. And so the CEO really needs to push those two things. And I think they're related. Valuable companies often can do the best at delivering on their mission. But that's the overall job. Now, how do you do it? Number one, this is according to me. Number one, you have to set strategy. So you've got to decide how you're gonna build a successful company, and it usually comes down to three things. Number one, you this is going to sound very basic. You have to create value for a customer. So you have to solve some customer's problem, and you want to be very clear about who your customer is and what problem they have. So that's kind of the first piece of strategy. The second piece of strategy is opportunity. So there's a lot of companies that solve problems for customers, but they're not that many customers, or the economics aren't very good. The gross margins aren't very good. So an opportunity is like, well, how many of those customers are there? Is it growing? And what are the unit economics? Can you build a big, valuable, profitable company? And then the third thing is advantage. So you got customer value in a really big opportunity, and then you've got to make sure that your company has certain advantages that your competitors cannot copy, so that if you become a big successful company, they don't just copy you and drive prices down. So that's strategy. So strategy. The second thing about being a CEO is team. You have to hire and structure an executive team who really then builds out the whole company, and you set the tone for that team, which kind of gets to number three, which is culture. And culture is all about, what it's like to work there and the way that people treat each other. And then the final piece is performance, operational excellence, making sure the company runs well. And if a CEO does those things, if they have a good strategy, hires a great team, sets a culture where people are engaged and motivated and aligned, and then really has a system for running the company in an efficient way, I would say they're doing a pretty good job as CEO. And we could talk about the values if you're interested, but that's how I would think about, the job role of CEO.
Love it. And just touching on the opportunity, I was actually following Coursera Connect that you held a few months back in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And obviously, I loved your keynote, and you had all the stats and the opportunity of $4.4 trillion productivity gains from AI, right? With
Mhm.
AI having such a huge impact across the board. I like how you said that AI is anyone who it can help anyone who thinks, right? And
Yeah.
just some of the stats that you brought up there, like more than half of all Gen AI enrollments come from emerging markets such as India
Yeah.
and Brazil. And in general, demand is so high that Coursera sees about 6 enrollments per minute. And that's
Mhm.
crazy. Now,
Yeah.
before we go into AI, I'm curious on obviously there's high demand there. Um, let's just briefly touch on things like cybersecurity, for example.
Mhm.
Cybersecurity skills, they remain crucial intelligence shortages and evolving threats from adversaries and e-crime. How do we encourage people to pursue their certain paths, such as cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think a lot of what it comes down to, and we're pushing much harder on this, is to realize that for most people as adults, it's not just about learning, it's about earning. People want to
Hmm.
learn things that can help advance their careers. And so I often say that don't expect someone to learn unless they say two things. I want to and I can. I want to learn and I'm able to learn. And so a lot of what we do is about creating access, about having really good content from the world's best universities and industry companies. We create learning experiences where people are supported. We have this AI assistant called Coach. We have videos and readings and assessments and projects, that whole learning experience. But a lot of the reason people want to learn on Coursera is for jobs, for a career, and people are looking for careers that are flexible, that pay reasonably well, that are meaningful to them and they enjoy, and also have good long-term opportunities. So I'd say, when we started as Coursera, I wasn't there, but it was a couple professors. It started really as like a course catalog. It's sort of like, look at all these great courses. And it wasn't really directed towards people's jobs. But now we're putting a lot more effort. And at the conference, you probably saw us demo the prototype for Coach as Career Guide, as an ability for someone to say, look, I'm not sure what career I want. And people usually say, like, well, what careers are available? Which ones pay well? Which ones provide flexibility and long-term value? And then, if that's the kind of career that could be good for me, what skills do I need to learn? And which credentials do I need to earn? Do I need a bachelor's degree? Do I need a college degree? If I need a degree, which degree do I need? What subjects should I be studying? But the key is, if I want to pursue a certain career, say cybersecurity, then there's a certain set of skills you're going to need and usually a certain set of credentials. And so we're putting a lot more effort into using this AI coach to not only help you learn, but help you navigate your career. In the case of cyber, I mean, every career has a lot of different skills. I'll tell you some of the basic ones that everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to know, how to think. how to communicate. I think AI has a lot to say about that. Well, I have a lot to say about that with respect to AI. How to think, how to communicate, how to work with people, how to coordinate your work, how to do basic time management and project management, how to resolve different conflicts that you might have with other people, often how to manage if you're going to be a manager. But then there's also some technical skills. I think generally speaking, everybody needs to be a good writer. Less so now with generative AI, which is good at writing. Everybody needs to have a basic command of data, and I think data visualization and storytelling. Uh, when we talk about communicating, a lot of it's with words, but generally people who can communicate visually often are more persuasive and communicate more effectively. And then honestly, coding, learning how to code and manipulate data is something else that's really valuable. So there's a wide software toolkit that I think everybody should really learn. And that should be, learn how to use a spreadsheet, learn how to use email, learn how to use a word processor, learn how to use a database, learn how to program in a basic language like JavaScript, and learn how to visualize your messages so that you can communicate effectively.
And you know what? I'm curious. Employers, they know that folks will be using ChatGPT, right? As you said, to help them write things. Um, how do we combine that learning experience with those tools without risking jeopardizing those certifications, and not promoting dependency or encouraging those shortcuts?
It's a great question. I mean, the promise of generative AI, one of the major promises is it can really boost cognitive ability. I use it all the time. My ability to process information, to clarify my thoughts, to articulate my thoughts more clearly, has been dramatically accelerated by generative AI. The danger is a little bit like, let's say, with a bicycle, right? I mean,
Mm.
bicycles used to just pedal, and you could switch gears, but you always had to put in the effort. It would help you get there. Now you have e-bikes. I have e-bikes. They're really great, and they do pedal assist. So you're still actually getting a little bit of exercise, but every time you pedal, you don't have to exert as much energy. Well, now, there's a lot of bikes, these Super 76s or whatever they are, and you don't have to pedal at all. They're just like electric scooters. Well, at that point, you're relying so much on the technology that is easy to have your own personal abilities atrophy. And whether that's your legs because you're riding an e-bike or whether that's your brain because you're over relying on ChatGPT, I really think that you want to use it as a thinking tool, but do not outsource your thinking to ChatGPT. I mean, it will get a lot of things wrong, but the bigger thing is you're not going to have a novel point of view, and you will not be really adding any incremental value if you just rely on ChatGPT. So I really think it is
Mm.
sort of a tool that you need to use and learn how to use properly. And if you do it the right way, I think you can become smarter. Another way to think about it perhaps is if you have, when you were going to school, if you were in a study group, you could talk with your friends and you can get a little bit smarter. They can teach you some things, you can teach them their things. But if you just like copied their work, you're not going to learn that material. And I think AI is pretty similar. So I think it's important to stay engaged, develop your own point of view, and remain committed to figuring things out yourself and learning as you go along. But it's a tool that almost everyone's going to have to learn how to use.
Understood. And I know you do a lot of traveling for work, engaging not only with universities, but also various companies and governments. How does Coursera approach its work with governments? What governments need?
Governments basically, what we find is they do a number of things. One thing that's kind of obvious is that governments employ a lot of people. So we have an offering we call Coursera for Business, and this is to help upskill and reskill employees in companies in data science and software engineering and marketing, project management, cybersecurity, you name it. I mean, there's a lot of different jobs, and everyone's needed to learn new things to do those jobs well. Um, and to a large degree, governments have a lot of employees, and they need to skill up their data scientists, and they have mobile app developers, and they have many of the same kinds of jobs. So a big part of what we do for governments is we upskill their employees. We also work with ministries of education who are responsible for making sure that their educational systems are effective. And we have an offering called Coursera for Campus that we sell directly to universities but we'll also sell that through governments. And then finally, some governments want to do citizen upskilling programs where the government will go right to the people and say, you might not be an employee working for the government, you might not be a student at school, but sort of any individual citizen of this country can learn Java or project management or cybersecurity or whatever, sort of as a workforce development opportunity. Those are the three ways that we work with governments.
I must say the mission, making sure education is accessible to everyone really resonates with me. I love what you guys doing out there. Now,
Yeah.
two quick questions that might be out just more, I guess, from a personal note. I'm curious, what's your favorite course at the moment?
You know, my favorite of all time still is Learning How to Learn. It's one of the most popular ones. It's by a neuro scientist named Barbara Oakley, and she teaches you how your brain works, and based on that understanding how your brain works, how to be the most effective learner. And she just came out with a course with another professor from Vanderbilt called, I think, Accelerating Learning with Generative AI. So it's really,
Mm,
I haven't taken that one yet. That's on my list. One that I just did was there's a Google course launching today, which is called
mm.
Prompting Essentials, and it's very cool. It's basically a course that teaches you all about prompting, and what I like about it, it has a lot of practical examples. It's taught by people at Google, and it's different people in different jobs at Google show you how they use generative AI in different ways to do their prompting. And it has a basic framework that I happen to really agree with, which is you want to write a really good prompt, you want to have the right context in there, and then you want to iterate as you talk to this LLM, this large language model. So I think the approach is quite good. It's very practical, shows you a lot of good examples, and it comes from people who really work at Google. So it's very high quality.
Nice. Well, thank you for a few suggestions. I'll have a look for sure. Now, I guess the most important question of them all. I heard you designing your dream home in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
What are some of the non-negotiables it must have?
Well, I have three daughters, and in my life, I think that being around people that you love and people who love you is more important than making money, and it's more important than just about anything. So I want to be with my family as I get older, and I want them to have a place and a reason to come together. So the number one non-negotiable is space for my daughters and their partners if they end up with partners. I'm assuming they will, and grandkids if I have grandkids someday. So I really want someplace for the family, and that's what I've been working on. I've been using this little product called SketchUp, which I just love, and a new well, for new to me, a rendering program called V-Ray. So I'm having a lot of fun with architecture and renderings and structural engineering and things like that. It's again a whole new realm to learn.
Jeff, thank you so much for joining the show. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Max. Great to be here.